Hey everyone, it's Candice. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel, and I want to get right into it, talk about everything we're seeing out there in June 2023 in the Toronto real estate market. First thing, main thing, interest rates. There has been an increase in interest rates. Bank of Canada just raised interest rates, and there's talks of another raise coming at the end of July. So what does this mean for you as a buyer or a seller? Well, obviously, we know that interest rates are pushed very high. It's actually the highest it's been in over 20 years. So, how does that affect the market and you? Well, first off, I want to talk about what I was seeing out there in May and what potentially can be seen now for June. In May, if you look at the numbers, you'll see that sales are up. Now, listings are still down, and a lot of people get confused by this. They go, well, Candice, how can listings be down if sales are up? What it means is that buyers and sellers are making transactions. So before, say in the October market of last year, the problem I was seeing is I'm taking out my buyers, we're looking at property, but the sellers want a certain price point, and my buyers want to pay a certain price point based on what market value is, and sometimes that didn't connect, right? So we didn't get the sales. The other issue was listings. We all know there's a big issue in regards to affordable housing and just housing in general coming on the market. And that's the biggest issue. It's not about buyer pent up demand. There's a lot of buyers I have out there, and so do my colleagues, that they're ready to buy. They're just, waiting for the right thing. So in May, we were seeing more sales. Price points were creeping up. So May, I started to see lots more offers. Price points were going up. And again, we were kind of seeing in the open houses, people going around to the same open houses. The joke that I was telling my clients is open houses are now all the rage. Instead of going out for brunch or, going out to say like a club or a party, you do open houses. Right? So they were kind of populating and filling up. And those that were actively buying, they would go to an open house. If they put an offer on that property and they didn't get it, you'd see them at the next open house, right? Because people are working within a certain budget for a certain kind of home. And that's what people are hoping to get. So that's what we were seeing in May. And if you look at the numbers of May 2022 to, May 2023 now, what you would actually notice is that they're not that much far off in terms of what the sales price was then to now. So we're kind of closing that gap. I have a lot of clients that always say to me, hey Candice, when's this market gonna, go down? When are things gonna really kind of level off? And I always like to make jokes that I don't know if the market necessarily goes down if we look at things historically. I think there sometimes is a momentary pause in the market due to, outside circumstances. That being said, I think especially with real estate, as we've seen, it can be really hard to predict, right? You have no idea what's going to happen, what's going to come out of left field that could affect it. Recently, it's been inflation numbers. We're still obviously dealing with the war, different things like that. So there's lots of things that factor into it. So once again, I always like to say to my clients, I don't necessarily think it's about timing the market, although there are things we can do, but I think it's more about time in market. And that's really what you want to think about based off your personal situation. So what's happening now in June? Well, as mentioned, with the interest rate hike just happening and another one potentially being forecasted, buyers and sellers are now calling me saying, what do we do, right? And it's a what do we do on two different ends. So I'll talk about my buyers first. So when I'm working with my buyers, I'm encouraging all my buyers to talk to their mortgage broker or their bank, get information, because your rate is now going to change. So let's say you've been looking for a month or a few months, what you were recently quoted might actually change now based on this new market update. So that's going to have an effect on your buying power. Might even have an effect on what we're looking for. So that's the first thing I want to say to you. If you're a buyer in this market, head straight over to your mortgage personnel, get some information. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to say is we kind of have to wait to see what happens in this market, because as the interest rates have risen, which, by the way, to be honest, it's the highest it's been in over 20 years, that's going to potentially make some buyers back off, right? Also, we had this summer weather happening that also sometimes makes buyers back off because they take a break, they go on vacation. There's an effect on the market like that. So that's something we're waiting to see in terms of the price points for certain properties based on, the behavior of what's happening out there with buyers. On the seller end, my sellers are having conversations with me and they're saying, whoa, Candice, should we be putting the property on the market, right? Now, there's two different kinds of sellers. There's a seller that does actually want to sell. There's a reason for them to sell. They either have to downsize, they want to move closer to family or move somewhere else, or there's another extenuating circumstance. Or there's sellers that don't have to sell and they're seeing what the market provides. And that happens sometimes. I call it tire kicking, where it doesn't happen that often, thankfully, because it's a waste of time for everybody. But where I go and see a property with my buyers, we put in an offer that is fair market value for what the market dictates. And for whatever reason, whether it's on the other end or whether it's what the seller entails, can't get it through their head that this is the price point now for this market. Oh, I know you wanted to get a certain price point. Like, for example, my sellers are saying to me, Candice, when's the best time to put my property on the market? And I like to joke and say, last month, in terms of May, because we were seeing really strong numbers, right? We don't know what's happening now. But at the end of the day, what's really kind of tough with sellers is getting into that mindset of recognizing what their property is actually worth versus a perceived value of it, right? And that's where we sometimes can have a disconnect, which can make it tough to actually have a sale. And that's kind of where we as realtors come in to educate and to really understand our client's mindset to try and make that win-win situation happen. So with these interest rate hikes, there's a few different scenarios that can happen. Bank of Canada is also forecasting potentially that at the end of this year, maybe even 2024, we might start seeing interest rates go down. Now, if that happens, you better bet one thing that will do is bring more buyers into the market, which potentially could put even more stress on the already low inventory levels that we have. So price point can potentially get pushed up again. That's what they're saying. But again, we can only deal with what is now. So best case scenario is, sellers come back to the table, start putting their property on the market, buyers start connecting, we make some good deals. If sellers get a little leery or they're not getting the amount of price point they want for their property, they might, kind of push back or take their property off the market, which will leave even less inventory. If buyers step back and they decide, hey, I don't want to participate in this market, and they wait and see, which it has very much been a wait and see market for, say, the last even year, little less than a year, it's one of these things that we kind of have to play it day by day. So a couple key tips I want to give everyone out there in this June market that we're seeing, or what you can kind of look to expect or what you might want to think about is this. If you're a buyer, obviously, number one, you really want to connect with a real good realtor and a really good real estate agent, real estate lawyer, and a really good mortgage broker or bank personnel, whoever you work with. You want to have all this information come together, because on the real estate side, we as realtors can educate you out there on what's actually happening, both just in terms of the numbers and what's actually being said. Because a lot of times the news reports things, and then we as realtors kind of look at that on the end of what we're actually seeing out there being boots on ground, or what the numbers are showing us, and we're saying, yeah, well, you're not telling the whole story, or that's not 100% correct, right? And people are listening to what's happening out there, and it's fascinating that I find as soon as the news reports something new, I immediately see a shift in behavior with my clients. So it really is fascinating to see how that happens, right? But working with a realtor, if you're a buyer, can really help you navigate this market, okay? We don't dictate price. I know a lot of people think that the realtors are the ones that put the price on the market. The market dictates the price. If you look at all the solds, you'll get an idea, right? What we can do is kind of take that data and information, help you understand why that's happening out there, what might that be looking like in the next little bit, and try to figure out what makes sense for you, where you are now, and where you want to be. As a seller, first thing I always ask my sellers, where are we going? Okay, why are we selling the property, or why are we thinking about selling the property? What's the motivation and mindset behind it? Because depending on what the strategy is of what you want to do afterwards, that's going to have an effect on, where you are in the cycle of the market. So for example, if you're buying something and you want to upsize, well, that's going to actually be a little bit of a different strategy than, say, if you're, if you're selling something and you want to upsize to buy something bigger, that's going to be a little bit of a different strategy than, say, if you want to sell something and move to a lower level market or lower price market, meaning maybe you move outside of Toronto, even outside of Ontario, right? There's going to be different strategies there. So that's what you want to discuss. Quickly want to touch upon my investors. Obviously, investors are also coming back in. Rents are through the roof. There are bidding wars on rents. And I'm not just talking about cheap rents. I'm talking about good price property. What I'm seeing out there is a lot of people who can't buy or can't buy right now, particularly if they have a family. They're looking to rent, and they want to rent the homes, the big detached homes, because they say, I'll never be able to afford this, right? So they're looking for a place for themselves, their partner, the kids, and the dogs. So when you have that, they're willing to pay a little bit more for certain properties. So we're actually getting bidding wars on properties, and properties that are leasing or asking to lease at a certain price point are going above that, okay? So with that being said, investors are kind of coming in. I'm seeing investors kind of pick up lots of property. The hottest properties right now that people are buying, anything that has additional opportunity to rent out or have multiple housing units. So anything with laneway housing, really, really hot. Obviously, basement suites have never been hotter. Anything that people can kind of do almost to house hack or to kind of have a place where they can have not just one, but multiple investment units is proving to be advantageous, right? And things that I'm talking about with my clients. You might be sitting out there and you might say, Candice, I can't buy. I really want to buy in Toronto, but it's so darn expensive and I just can't do it. What do I do? Well, I'm actually having these conversations with my clients, and something we're actually working actively towards is purchasing or investing outside of the direct Ontario area. I have connections with, agents and mortgage personnel that are in Ottawa, Montreal, Calgary, Halifax, even just outside of Canada. And we're actually talking about ways that we can, purchase property outside, have that completely property managed. You see your cash flow and your income statements, you're up to date on everything. And no, you might not be able to purchase in Toronto, but you're still buying an investment, right? And you're still kind of in the game. And that's what people are looking to do. So I've had multiple clients where we're renting in Toronto right now, but we're buying outside of Ontario. Okay, and that's helping them kind of keep up with what's going on with the housing that way. Look out in the next couple of months. I'm going to be having a webinar where I'm going to be talking with some of these outside market agents and talk about how you can invest outside of Ontario if that's something that you are interested in. So what I want to leave everybody with for this June 2023 Toronto Real Estate Update is, if you are thinking about buying property right now, I don't necessarily say put a pause on it, but I think it's time to really actively look on what's happening out there. This is where we're going to start seeing if there's a shift. Are people going to start responding to this interest rate hike? Pull back? What's going to happen? If you're a seller, really good time to think about why you're putting your property on the market, what you want to do, because that will also dictate timing and best way to present your property. Okay? Other than that, I hope everybody is safe and well. I hope this was a useful update for you. If you like this video, you can subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.